focusing?
I don't want to be county judge or county commissioner because right now that's the only place it can fall. If you're not in a municipality, all the government services essentially fall to the county. We're lucky in Houston because most of our development is done via MUDs, a separate independent municipal entity with very limited powers. And as my friend Joe Allen says, no employees. So the administration of MUDs is very, very simple. So the water, sewer, drainage side of the equation will get handled, it will get refurbished, and it will be dealt with. Streets are dedicated to the county. I would dare say that few, if any, counties have extensive long-term sinking funds or anything like that set up to replace streets. County sheriff's operations provides law enforcement. They're not city police departments. They don't maintain the same ratios of deputies to population. So there is a host of issues that we at the West Houston Association have identified, worked on. Unfortunately, we don't have all the answers just yet, but we continue to have those dialogues with county officials and others. It's an area that we will face, I'm not going to say growing problems, but there's going to be growing opportunities to solve problems over the next few decades.
One thing that's important to note, this thing working, hello? Yeah, is that people like government at a small level too. And so to the extent that MUDs can provide more of these services at the very localist of level where you can go to your neighbor down the street and talk about some of the issues, that's got some appeal. And so if they operate properly, and we actually have MUDs now that have road powers and park development powers and so on, they can really serve that local need, not for security so much, but at least serve them. And so we've seen some communities, like in Missouri City, for example, MUDs that were developed before the city annexed the area are still in place because the people like having their water and sewer and those services at a very small, discrete level that they feel like they can control. So there's some positives about the ideas of having these very small districts still having those kind of controls.
Let me ask a question, too, if I might, to Ted or others. One thing we haven't talked about, we talked about master plan communities and how their market share increased and differentiations and what a smaller community can do to be more like them. But one thing that hasn't been brought up that to me is critical is the programming that can go on and does go on in many master plan communities in terms of creating a sense of place and community by having the St. Patrick's Day Parade, the 4th of July picnic, those kinds of things which really do build community, like, you know, our vision of, you know, South Side or something used to be, or West U. I mean, the reality is these are small village-like, you know, communities that can develop their very own sense of community, where the moms know each other from the PTA, and they're playing Little League together, and they're doing, and it really is, in a way, can be small town USA reborn, and a lifestyle that we would all like to have in a very big way. So Ted, can you talk a little bit about the whole programming portion, or y'all not do that much? Y'all do a fair amount.
You really just sort of answered your own question. Again, back to our HOAs, they're incredibly important in programming of communities and in activating the community. But like an HOA, so is a school, so is a church, so are community organizations. There's not a single one. Having the urbanized retail areas becoming a focal point within communities, I think is one of the great steps that we've, you know, gone forward, because that's, you don't necessarily get to see people you know unless you have that focal point. You know, if you go to the church on Sunday, you see the people you know there, and likewise if you drop your kid off at school. But when you go to a common area that has restaurants and shopping, movies, etc., that really enriches the breadth of the community. But it's a combination of everything. HOA is a very important part of it. We actually have in several of our communities what we call community service organizations that add to that probably even a little bit more significantly than HOAs do.
Thank you. Are there Any other questions? Anybody? Peter? Did everybody hear the question? Y'all will repeat it because we're recording it. Is that the question is, and I may shorten it just a tad. Do we foresee the continued development of creation and development of large-scale master plan communities in the Houston market, particularly given financing challenges that we see, at least in the current market?
Larry, you want to answer that question? It's going to be difficult. There's no question about it. Number one, even finding the land anymore to assemble. And I truthfully don't think you're going to see many of the mega communities. I don't think you'll see another Cinco Ranch that now we've broached 8,000 acres. And of course, it's small compared to the Woodlands. Perhaps the 1,500 to 2,000 acre projects that if you do the right marketing programs and do the right segmentation, that you could march through one of those in a 7 to 10 year period to significantly lessen your market exposure to cycles. Those are possible. I can say there's a lot of equity looking for investments today. The cost of the equity is expensive, not prohibitive. And to a large degree, too many of them are still looking for distressed property, and I sort of have a different take on it. I think we need to be looking for distressed opportunities. And there's a distressed property is probably going to continue to be a distressed property. But because an owner or a JV got into trouble because what we've been through, we've never been through. I mean, the liquidity crisis was truly unlike anything we've ever seen before. So I think there's opportunities. They're really starting to come out slowly. The extend and pretend is coming to an end, but it's still going to take about 3 more years, in my opinion.
Yeah, Mike, it's amazing to me that when I think back, many of us were here for the RTC days in the late 80s when people were dumping properties, and we were all moaning and groaning about how horrible it was for our property because our competitors were dumping around us, and now we're all moaning and groaning because they won't dump their properties to those of us looking for them, and there's this huge gap between the bid and the ask. I mean, we in Midway have put a fund together, and we're looking hard for things, and we've got bank relationships. We're looking all over the country, and it is really, really hard to find something that makes sense in pencils. And last spring, I went up and visited with all the private equity in New York and wanted to see what that whole experience was like. And they were very nice folks, so to speak. And they're, you know, but they needed to have 20% plus returns. And I'm just not sure these long-term kind of projects. Yeah, I know. I'm just not sure a 10-year master plan community project can yield 20% returns. Maybe it does, but it'll be tough. And so for me, my biggest concern, you know, for the next 20 years, it will be finding quality developed lots. That is going to be our constraint because the financing out there to do development is not there at all. And it's just, you know, now's when it should be there because now you can do better deals, but the bankers sometimes are too aggressive in the wrong times and not aggressive enough in the right times. But we have been able to kind of renew our building loans and things, and so we have plenty of funds for that. But going to get money for land development deals are tough. And Mike?